All right, let's talk about live action fitness summer camp. I'm Coach Jason. I'm your tour guide today. I'm joined with Alan Wetherald. Alan, please introduce yourself for anyone who doesn't know you.
Yeah, hello. Yep. So I am the science teacher at Key Elementary School here in the Palisades, and I've been running an after-school Dungeons and Dragons club for many years, and it's one of my favorite things I've been able to share with students to show off their creativity, encourage them to read more fantasy series, painting miniatures. So there's so many avenues of it that you can see in other videos that Coach Jason has made. And I'm excited to now be joining a summer camp of Jason's program.
Absolutely. So you're going to be the newest tour guide. Tour guide is our term basically for the dungeon master. So you're going to be running the game, running the adventures. We're going to be following your lead, and I couldn't be more excited about it. So I know we're in good hands here, and we're going to make sure you've got everything you need ahead of time so you can prep for our campaign. And that's a big part of what we do as tour guides and dungeon masters is behind the scenes, making it look easy at the table, but it's a lot of work, isn't it?
Right, but for those who enjoy being a tour guide or dungeon master, that's still playing too. I get to play characters, I get to see where they go and improvise where needed, but always leave it a mystery as to whether I knew the players were going to do something and plan for it, or did I just go on the spot. So I'm excited to enter your world to design a fun and enriching game.
Exactly. So we're going to be doing 5 days in a row, and we've got 5 hours each day. Okay, so that's in real world time. So we're going to be taking, we got a little bit of time for our lunch breaks and our movement games and everything, bathroom breaks. But we're gonna have plenty of adventure over the next 5 days. So we've got 4 kids on the team here. Okay, so a campaign for 4 kids. And good news here, actually 3 of them are already in my campaign. So they're already up and running. They have their characters, they've got some experience, they've been earning gold coins, they've been earning their special abilities, some magic items and stuff like that. And actually, the one other guy who's going to be a little bit newer, he's going to be playing in one of the pop-ups here for Juneteenth. So I'm going to already get him started with his character creation. So we're going to be able to kind of come in there and hit the ground running. And speaking of which, we're going to really get started just having fun, moving around together by playing some of our mini games. And I know we got to play some of these before because you were a player in my very little brief LAF demo game at this health and fitness expo. So you've done some of these before, and just wanted to put out a few examples. There's plenty more. We don't have time to go into everything today, but we're going to get moving with little fun mini games like Evasion. So you have to run around, but don't fall into the lava. You have to dodge yoga balls. You have to dodge the toy sword as I swing the sword at you and stuff like that. We're going to be playing toe tag. So it's a game where you got to tag the other person on the foot. All right, so it's kind of like an active game of tag where you're both it at the same time. So we've got free-for-all versions, we've got one-on-one versions, we've got sumo wrestling, same thing, kind of like a push out, push the other guy into the lava type game. So we're going to be having a lot of fun getting moving, and then also you're earning gold coins while you're playing these games, and you get to keep those gold coins and use them in our adventure. So stone's throw, we're going to be playing catch with medicine balls. All right, just throwing the medicine ball a bunch of different ways. So not every game is super competitive, right? It's just all about having fun and doing it together. We've got Mirror Master. So me, or maybe even you as the tour guide, will be moving, doing all sorts of, stuff on the ground, stuff on the feet. No talking, though. Everyone else is going to have to follow along and do whatever it is that you do. So a little bit of a copycat type game. And who knows, maybe if some of the kids are ready, they'll be the Mirror Master as well. Spider Queen says something I came up with a long time ago, but I've recently kind of brought it back, actually. So You lay down on the floor, and of course, it's a version of Simon Says, but you're laying flat on the ground because you're stuck on the Spider Queen's web. And the Spider Queen tells you what to do. Of course, you got to listen carefully. Spider Queen says, put your arms and legs up in the air. Spider Queen says, lower one of your legs. Spider Queen says, switch the legs, stuff like that. Switch the legs. Spider Queen didn't say. And you'd be shocked, actually, because that is one heck of an ab workout when you're laying on the ground, lifting arms and legs and doing all sorts of movements and stuff like that. And just one last example, we may even have time to do battle stations. So we get all four of the kids separated onto different yoga mats, and then there's a different move, maybe even using some of our equipment. Like we have dumbbells, we have medicine balls, we have yoga balls, resistance bands, that kind of thing. And then you move station by station, you rotate around, rotate around, rotate around. That's battle stations. And so there's plenty more where that came from, but we're just going to start out. We're going to be moving around, having some fun. It's a way for the kids to get to know each other. They get to know you. They follow your lead, kind of set the tone, and they'll realize you're not there to be their drill sergeant, but we're just going to be moving around and having some fun. And of course, like I said, earning the gold coins, which is going to be critical for the game mechanics here when we really get into how to play live action fitness. So, before we move on, so does that make sense as far as mini games? You played some of those before?
Absolutely, yeah, and all themed with Dungeons and Dragons style skills for different classes and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a
Exactly.
great hook.
Exactly. Yeah. So like the rogues are really good with evasion. I
Mhm.
have a sword fight mini game as well for the warriors. It's funny now that you got me going, of course. Raise the Dead.
Oh, pardon
You're in the dark, but that's
me.
perfect, right? Because it's kind of a game you'd play in the graveyard, a bit of for the necromancers out there, using magic to control the undead. So we'll go over those kind of games later, but it's a ton of fun. And of course, there's character creation. So each of our players, they've created their own characters, different types. We have barbarians, we have rogues, we have different magic users, shape-shifting druids, as well as, lightning elementalists and sorcerers and all that good stuff. So all those guys, they're already going to have their characters created, which is really just a way to hit the ground running. So they'll be able to introduce themselves, who they are, what their character concept is, and I use the term archetype, right, as replacing your race and class with your archetype. You're going to be a samurai or you're going to be the warlock, whatever it is. That's your archetype. And after character creation, one of the other things that you could do as a tour guide is work on character development. And so that is something I think it'll be really cool. We may or may not use notebooks. Sometimes I like to do that if it's not too much hassle, for the kids. But now you also gave me a really neat gift when I saw you for the Expo live action fitness demo game, the cards for creating your backstory.
Hmm.
And so that would be something that's fun that we could also implement, So while you're running the game, we might just go around, do a question about your backstory or a question about, the kind of goals you have for your character in the future, what it is that really drives your character. I've also done a little bit of work recently on character flaws. That's another interesting thing, right? Of course, Indiana Jones is afraid of snakes. I don't know. Character flaws just sort of make the game a little bit more rich and realistic because nobody's perfect, right? We don't want to play a game where everybody's just, the perfect hero without any flaws.
Yeah,
So,
and Coach Jason, when I play with my group after school, it's definitely Mr. Wetherald's set of modified rules and how we create characters and that kind of thing, just to fit with different constraints that we have. But I definitely emphasize a background story so that way it will allow me to incorporate things into the overall game that encourages them to do something they might not otherwise do in order to achieve that goal, like looking for my long lost twin sibling, or
Mm-hmm.
this wizard item that was supposed to be hidden in this old forgotten tower, whatever it happens to be, so I can infuse that into the game, and that's part of their development. And then through the course of the game, if they don't begin with some kind of interesting, we'll call it hindrance or phobia or whatever it happens to
Mm-hmm.
be, that gives a bit more character and allows them to more fully enter the role playing side of things, where they can be more that theatrical style of player. They might kind of earn that through instance where they were fighting and they rolled a one, or they tripped, or just something that happened. And it also makes her a memorable character for each member of the party. Um, so I will definitely plan on incorporating that when I am the tour guide for that group.
That's perfect. Yeah. And if you see somebody who maybe they're doing a good job acting that out as the tour guide, it's up to you. It's your discretion, but feel free to throw them an extra gold coin,
Oh yeah,
So that's,
I do
yeah.
that in my game when
Yep.
I'm here, and that earns them like a free reroll of some kind when I say, "Hey, that was pretty creative teamwork or individual role playing or whatever it happens to be," just so that's incentivized over just knock down the door and blast it with spells as
Yeah.
like the number one answer to deal with problems.
Exactly. Oh, it's so true. So you can always give them some extra gold, which will, be useful for them no matter what, and just encourage them to really be creative and start acting. And it's okay if you're not just Superman, just
Yeah,
crushing it and perfect at
yeah.
everything. And I happen to know one of our guys who is going to be in your campaign this summer, and based on a gift. I happen to know that he is on a personal quest to get a baby amethyst dragon as his
Okay.
familiar.
Okay.
Baby amethyst dragon for my
And
special guy out there.
and the more I know ahead of time as I'm planning a campaign and what the storyline would be for that time of summer camp, that can be infused in.
Hmm.
Not that it's just a free gift that at some point I just put out there, but some kind of side quest or incidental quest or something like that. So,
Right, right. And we actually have the baby amethyst dragon 3D printed. This
whoa.
was an amazing Christmas gift that I got last Christmas. And she sits on top of the 3D printed dice tower. So she's got a little layer there. So there's amethyst crystals and gigantic mushrooms at the top. And this dice tower actually has two different holes at the top where you drop your dice.
Mhm.
Dice roll down the spiral staircase,
Mhm.
and we use this for special rolls when it really counts, when it's
Yeah,
something big.
same. I have my little tower, castle keep tower
Mm.
that my students use, and oftentimes they're interested in the painting side too. Once they see the model, maybe or maybe not, that comes up during the course of camp, but that's a whole nother side of the hobby that many times students are interested in. So we'll see if
Yeah,
it pops up, but we'll stick to what the core of the camp will be, though.
right, right. That's actually something that I would like to see and try out, because the kids are really creative. We've done some drawing contests
Yeah.
actually where the kids were really into drawing, so we just spent some time and they're like, I don't know what to draw. So actually we rolled on a roll table using our bestiary, which is just this library of monsters that we all
Hmm.
that we have on our website. And then I rolled and told them, all right, this is what we're going to draw. We're going to draw a giant red dragon. We're going to draw a naga, which is a kind of snake monster, So we're going to
Right.
draw the owl bear. And
Cool.
so it'd be also really cool. Yeah. If we did some miniature painting, that would be
Sure.
awesome.
Hap
In fact, yeah, I've got
Happy
a
to
few
do that.
miniatures. I haven't done much of that myself, but yeah, if you could teach people how to paint miniatures, we actually do have art supplies at the studio. It's a full, It's a when we're not there, it's also a shared space. It's a speech
Hmm.
therapy clinic, an occupational therapy clinic. So there's paper, there's markers, there's crayons, colored pencils, and paint as well. So that'd be really cool to do a little mini
Absolutely. Yeah,
painting.
we'll
Yeah.
see if it can be planned to be incorporated. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm excited to include anything that clicks with the group that I have. I'm happy to introduce through the time of the camp.
Yeah, exactly. And so we'll get into some of the gaming supplies a little bit later because there's the miniatures, that's just one bit of it. And then we were talking about the dice tower, and
Mhm.
obviously that goes with dice, but there's all sorts of gaming supplies that we've got. So yeah, we've got you covered there. So you've got four kids in the group. So one of them wants this amethyst baby dragon, right? Now he is a magic user. He's a bit of an arcane trickster, a bit of a
Mhm.
prankster. He's got a bit of a yin and yang type of magical abilities, combining shadow magic with holy light magic, using
Okay.
a magic orb as his focus item. So you've got a bit of a magic user there, yin and yang, and also has recently acquired a dimensional pocket. So he could fit some
Okay.
extra items there, almost like a
Sure.
bag of holding.
Okay. Heward's handy haversack. If you
Sure.
know that famous item from back in the day.
I didn't know that. Is that what they used to call the bag of holding?
Yeah,
Was that one?
Heward's handy haversack is basically it's a little bag with a Mary Poppins like pocket dimension that you can just pull out all kinds of stuff.
Perfect. Yeah. No, I didn't know it was called that, but I hear you. Yeah, it's like Tensor's floating disk. It's like one of the
Hmm.
classic,
Hmm.
you know, things.
Yep.
So your Holy Light and Shadow guy, this guy, he goes by Crimson. Crimson,
Cool.
right? This is
Cool.
Agent Crimson. So
Hmm.
you've also got a rogue in the group here. So
Hmm.
we've got a rogue. He's got two daggers, one of which magically extends. His name is Agent Glexus.
Okay.
So he's got an anti-magic dagger and an extendable dagger. He's also the richest player in the game because he just really has been training and training, saving up a lot of money. Richest player in the game by far, actually, and has recently acquired some air bending magic, right?
Okay.
But it's lower level, right? Because he's
Hmm.
mainly a rogue, then warrior, then mage. So he's got a little bit of air magic. So there's a limit on how powerful it can get as far as
Hmm.
casting magic spells.
Hmm.
But it's one of my favorite character concepts, the arcane trickster, where you're a bit
Hmm.
of a,
Classic.
you're really the rogue, but you use a little bit of magic to kind of make things happen.
Prestidigitation.
Yeah, yeah, that kind of thing, exactly. And I actually built my own character around a similar concept,
Hmm.
but with a little bit of the force, a little bit of telekinesis, like Mage Hand.
Hmm.
So I'm a bit of an arcane trickster myself, and I could grab a key, for example.
Right.
If I needed to break out of jail, I might be able
Hmm.
to just snag that key using a little bit of magic or just give something a gentle push if I need to. So low level magical abilities there. I've also got a magic paintbrush that lets me basically draw in the air or on any surface in any
Okay.
color. Okay. So leaving messages or tricking people or you can do anything when you're with the power of the pen. So an interesting magic item at you gotta be creative to make good use of that. It's not just like a hammer you're gonna hit somebody with. So couple other players here that are going to be in your gaming group. So one of them is a shapeshifter.
Okay.
All right, a druid shapeshifter. So
Okay.
he's got a few different forms right now. I know he's got Venus flytrap, can turn into a
Okay.
Venus flytrap, as well as a few other animals as well. But then recently, this kid's gotten very creative, um, new to D&D,
Hmm.
and now he has pioneered something that he is calling cheese magic. Okay, cheese
Okay.
magic, and he has acquired a magic staff of cheese.
Okay.
And this can turn someone else into a block of cheese, effectively stunning them and freezing them
Right.
momentarily. as well as summoning a swarm of mice that he calls Bob. All right. So Bob, the swarm of mice that are kind of under his control. So very creative, out of the box kind of character creation
Yes.
with this guy. And then we have one last player who
Hmm.
actually is going to be creating this character tomorrow.
Cool.
So to be determined. And, that's, I think,
Cool.
one of the, yeah, most exciting parts of the game when somebody is creating that new character. It's like a blank canvas, Who do you want to be? Who are you becoming? Don't know, right? It'll be up to him. So I'll have to
And
tell you later. I'll fill you in.
yeah, but having a good, the menu of archetypes, or, I mean, oftentimes when students are introduced to the game, I just, typically they're going to be interested in fantasy books or movies, etc. And they say, well, I kind of am basing it off of character X, like Legolas or whatever from Lord of the Rings. I mean, okay, you can be, a template of that, and you can, if that's familiar, we can just kind of start there. So,
Totally.
yep, that's what I like to do. Or I might throw in as the tour guide, um, a character from a well-known intellectual property just for fun once in
Oh,
a
sure.
while. To me, like Dumbledore makes a little cameo, or Gandalf,
Yeah.
or whatever, just for
Yeah.
something fun.
Yeah. That's
Yeah, so
perfect.
I can't wait to hear what characters developed.
Absolutely. And it just reminds me, I have another player in one of my campaigns where, he based his character off of Link from Zelda,
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
perfect
for
example.
sure.
And
Hmm.
it's funny, he kind of changed his concept a little while ago, and he used to be Legolas.
Hmm.
That was his character concept as well. So that's a perfect way to do it. Making basing it off of a classic, well-known, fantasy characters is fantastic.
Hmm.
I even had a campaign adventure module we went through recently where Grok Strongjaw made an appearance. If you know him from Critical Role,
Yeah.
the Goliath
Oh
barbarian.
yeah.
Okay. Had a little birthday party, they had to give him some birthday gifts and then, a little couple surprise plot twists along the way. But Grog Strongjaw, made an appearance.
Hmm.
So that's always fun. And speaking of which, so you're the tour guide. So now you're the referee and running the whole world. So I
Hmm.
want to talk a little bit about creating NPCs and monster stats
Hmm.
and stuff like that. So we've got a few basic stats, and you've seen some of this before, right? But all the characters, you've got your warrior stat, your rogue stat, and your mage stat.
Hmm.
And I'll look at each NPC or monster as you're creating it. And you're going to make a little judgment call to put the stats on the creature. I'm going to judge each of those on a scale of 1 through 5. Right? So warrior 1 through 5, rogue 1 through 5, mage 1 through 5. How powerful is this guy as a magic user? Maybe not at all, or maybe that's their main thing. They're like a powerful lich with tons of, magic powers,
Right.
or who knows? Maybe it's a monkey you find in the jungle, who
Right.
doesn't do any spell casting. So you're basically going to take those three stats and make a judgment call 1 through 5, right? And that'll be their modifier, right? So if it's a 3, they get a +3 for whatever. Maybe it's their
Hmm.
warrior stat, right? So it's just like how you created your own character,
Hmm.
which I think was based on Conan, if I don't
Oh yeah. Yep.
if I'm
Gotta
not
go
mistaken.
Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah. It's been a little while, actually. I've got a big book of the short stories that I'm working my way through. I got
Hmm.
to pick that back up, actually. Those are a ton of fun. Those are really good
Oh yeah.
adventures to read through.
Hmm.
So then you've got, defense. Basically, I just put warrior and rogue. I add it together and add 10, and you'll
Yep.
get a flat defense score.
Yep.
Okay. Now, then the last one is health. And this is where it depends on how challenging do you want this encounter to be, right? Because
Mhm.
sometimes there are a few guys you're going to come in, you're going to beat them up, and then you're going to move on. Or is it the big boss fight where it actually needs to be much more of a challenge? Maybe it's one big monster. It's going to need a ton of hit points, or maybe there's a army, or the guy has got minions or something like that,
Right.
right? So you're going to determine how many health or hit points each of these creatures and monsters has, right? So, one hit point, that's going to go down in one hit,
Right.
right? So, a classic minion, two, three, four, five. I mean, especially keeping in mind if your entire team of adventurers is going to gang up on this one big creature, it's going to need a lot more hit points than the players,
Right.
right? So it's going to need more like 10, 15, 20 hit points if it's just all by itself. So you're going to have to sort of wait, how hardy is this creature? I think that's one of the biggest tools you've got as the tour guide when you're designing the monsters. Like, how much health does this thing actually have?
Right. And then I also incorporate environmental factors and conditions on them to where maybe the party is fighting on, a bridge and it's rickety. And, while they're dealing with whatever creatures it is, they have to do some kind of test to see if they fall through, like, you know, part of it that falls through.
Yeah,
Or it might be a lot of little typically weaker like goblins or something, but they have a chief that's organizing them and they're fighting in some formation that the party has to deal with. So, I begin the encounter with how it fits in the story in an interesting and meaningful way, and then derive the creatures and encounter from that. So it fits the story, and they have to solve, you know, that it's dynamic, and they have to do some problem solving in the midst of, just trying to fight, um, incorporate their different abilities together. So that way each one is as memorable, right, as it can be.
that's perfect. Exactly. Because you want to use the environment. It's not like we're just on a flat, empty room and there's
Right,
nothing there. The weather's always perfect. It's totally
right,
irrelevant, right?
right.
No, exactly. Yeah. You're going to be, changing. Who knows? Maybe you're fighting in darkness.
Yeah.
Maybe you're fighting in a narrow hallway and,
Hmm.
we have to go down one at a time, or who knows what's going on. So of course the environment is a huge part of the game. That's where the dungeons come in when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons,
Yep.
right? So it's like Indiana Jones, there might be a trap. Uh-oh,
Yep.
right? Oh, how am I going to get over to that treasure chest? I'm going to have to jump over this giant pit,
Yep.
So I had some crazy shenanigans with that recently in a game where they had to get over this gigantic pit with a squid down at the bottom, and then
Hmm.
there was a bridge that had gone across, but the bridge was broken. So like, I don't know how you're going to get from here to there to get to the boss room. I don't know. You tell me. That's
Right.
where the problem solving creativity comes in with your players, right?
Right. And it spurs them to um be more imaginative with how they engage in their, the environment that we all have a different picture of in our head, but the more you ask questions as well, I'm gonna go look for this or that, or oh well, I have this ability, whatever it happens to be. So the more challenges you have, the more they get to kind of stretch the limits of what the character can do and work cooperatively as a team.
Yeah, exactly. It's a couple things that it reminds me of. Like, do you know Patrick Rothfuss, the author?
Oh yeah. Hmm.
Right? Okay.
Name of the Wind
So,
and all that. Yep.
yeah, and he was playing D&D with one of his famous characters, Viari, and so he would always come up and he'd be like, "Is there a chandelier?" Right. And so he'd like swing from the chandelier. They're like,
Right.
oh, yes, there's dozens of them, whatever. So just finding a way to, incorporate the environment, or maybe you cut the cord for the chandelier and it drops down and
Right.
like
All
crushes a bunch of bad guys.
be all swashbuckling and
Yeah,
Three Musketeer like, yeah.
exactly.
Oh
Total
yeah. I
swashbuckler.
mean, when the opportunity presents itself, if something can be kind of cinematic or
Yeah.
very much, at the end of each session, I try and have some kind of cliffhanger.
Hmm.
Like, okay, well, you open the door or you solve this encounter, but all of a sudden, whatever happens, and we'll find out tomorrow. And they're like,
Yeah,
oh.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I've
So,
done that too.
oh
Exactly.
yeah.
That's always best, just like, like what they did with Game of Thrones. There's either something crazy happens
Oh
or,
yeah.
it's a cliffhanger and you're like, I don't know what's going to happen,
Yep. Yep.
creatures coming out of the portal. You'll find out next time what
Right.
it's like. Oh God.
Now you
And
keep
then
coming back.
yeah, after they ended up getting across that pit that I was talking about, they were in the boss room with
Hmm.
it's a huge underground cavern, and the boss, big bad guy is trying to get this powerful artifact, and they're basically trying to stop him, before he gets his
Hmm.
hands on it. And this is where actually for the very first time you kind of helped inspire this. I used the Dread Tower. Okay, so could you
Yeah.
describe that for anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about?
The Dread Tower. Dread is a game. Dread, it sounds like a product, but so there's a very simplified role-playing game called Dread, and there's no dice, there's no complex character sheet. You have little index card where you write information down, and whenever a character wants to perform an action, they pull a die. They pull a block from a Jenga tower. So typically this is done in horror games. So then as your group, let's think of it like the Goonies or some classic 80s movie. And as they want to break down the door or go swimming or, solve this puzzle, any action you want to do, you have to make a pull from the tower. And as you go through the game, it becomes more tenuous until when someone pulls and the tower falls, that character is, I mean, maybe not be so morbid as marked for death, but they are marked for something bad will happen to them, either immediately in that moment or when it would make the most sense to the person running the game. But it could be applied for many things. I mean, it's, just the suspense of when is it going to fall?
Yeah,
Am I going to be the one to be marked? Like, what's going to happen to me? Am I going to be saved? Am I out? So that kind of thing. So that's what dread is.
exactly. Yeah. So we used the Dread Tower, but in our live action fitness game, so we still had dice, we still had our character cards and all the same stuff, but every time they took a major action, they had to pull from the Jenga tower and
Cool.
put the block on top.
Hmm.
And so they didn't know what was going to happen. That's the thing. So it adds a little bit, or
Hmm.
sometimes a lot of it of trepidation,
Yeah.
should we say, right?
Right.
So they don't know what's going to happen, right? But of course, we're in this underground tavern, and so rocks falling on top
Uh-oh.
of you,
Hmm.
right? Uh-oh. So, but we don't know when, we don't know where. So it's just a way of upping the stakes a little bit, adding a new, different kind of game mechanic. And of course, just like the dice, even you and me as tour guides and dungeon masters, we don't know exactly we don't know who's going to knock down the tower,
Right.
right? So that's part of the fun as well. It's like, what's going to happen? We're discovering what's going to happen together.
And, it highlights risk reward,
Yeah.
um, or just building suspense and tension. Is it worth doing this? Do we kind of risk, do whatever it happens to be? So, um,
Hmm.
these mechanics can work really well, and drawing from different games, um, can be, very helpful in producing the kind of game or emotions out of the game that you want the players to have.
Yeah, exactly. So we're gonna get into supplies, but so we've got the dice, we've got the boards, we've got Jenga tower as well. In case you want to use it, that's up to you.
Hmm.
But we've got that. And so as you're creating, these monster stats, you've also got special items or special abilities, right? So you can decide, um, if it's a dragon, obviously, it's going to be able to fly, right? But then maybe it has, of course, it's got a tail. So then maybe you've got an extra tail attack whoosh, that'll
Right.
knock somebody over,
Like
right? Or it could use its wings,
breath weapon, right?
breath weapon.
Strafe,
Exactly.
fire, whatever. Yeah.
So you've got all that listed out. You know what the creature is and what they're capable of. And so then you can decide, you can put these on separate cards.
Hmm.
And then while we're going around and around after we roll initiative, let's say we're in a combat scenario, you can decide what abilities it has at the table,
Hmm.
right? So each will have a card, like a card that has like wings, another card for tail, another card for the breath weapon. And as you activate these special abilities, you simply turn the card sideways, tap the card, indicating that you have used that special
Hmm.
ability.
Hmm.
Then it'll all reset in the next round. All
Hmm.
the cards will reset and be usable again, unless for some reason it was like a limited resource or it has to recharge or something special like that.
Right. You can only tap it once and then that's it, or something like that.
Yeah, for each round at
Right.
least, exactly. Or if it was something special, that you
Yeah.
like, say, and these players have it as well. So say they have something like a potion, which I
Right.
always like to use as like a great example. So that's a minor action. You could always drink a potion when it's your turn. And then that's a one use item right there, right? So you pop the potion, you're going to drink this. Maybe you regain some health, or maybe it ups your defense or something
Hmm.
like that because your skin turns to bark and gets, extra scaly. You get some
Hmm.
natural armor. So then the players, if the players are doing it, they'll hand you the potion card
Right.
to indicate that they used it
Use the
up,
item. Yep.
right? And so it's up to you if you want to have something like that for your
Hmm.
monsters.
Hmm.
Could do that, or it could be a replenishable, rechargeable resource. That's up to you. And then, of course, you have items. So now, as tour guides and dungeon masters, we got to be a little careful about the items because it's really cool. You give, say it's a big bad guy who's got some special items. Because then, if the players defeat this creature, they're gonna loot it.
Right.
So that's okay, but just, be prepared for the players to be like, "Oh, that's going to be my magic sword, and that's going to be my shield or a magic ring of power, whatever it is." That could be a loot drop.
It could be, but just like with hindrances and bonuses for characters, oftentimes I'll tell students, yeah, you can take that, but then it's cursed and
Yep.
it's like linked to their life force in some way, or yes, but now the more you use it, the more the previous owners, think like a Horcrux from Harry Potter, they begin to like infect your mind so you can use and get a lot of power, but the drawback is if you use it too much, you'll be like completely enthralled by whatever was curse was put on this item. So
Yeah.
yeah,
No, exactly. So there's a
nothing
limitation.
is
That's
you
perfect.
nothing can ever just be as it seems on face value.
No, exactly. Yeah,
I,
you got to
I'm
be
not doing
careful.
my job as a DM or tour guide if it's just as simple as, yeah, you pick it up and keep it.
Right, right.
If I
So,
if I put it that way, then they should be suspicious. They're like, "Oh, what?
yeah, everything's fine. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
don't feel
fine
any
for
difference.
now." You
Yeah.
don't detect any magic.
Right. Seems okay.
Yeah, seems okay.
It's so true. Yeah, like perception checks. Like, no, you don't hear anything.
Yeah, you don't detect any traps. Does that mean there's no trap? Anyway, yeah.
Right? Yeah, they get even more nervous. It's perfect. So exactly, that's what I do. Or sometimes, like kind of like what you were getting at, where you'd have to attune to the item in order to make the full use out of it. It might have some
Yeah.
limitation or something. So there's the magic items, there's special abilities, including feats and who knows, maybe, something like a dragon or something might
Mhm.
have natural armor. You might give it a little bit of a buff to its defense. The last little option that you can play with as the tour guide is spending gold.
Mhm.
So if you want to, you can give the creature, the boss, gold of its own to spend, which you've already seen. You can spend the money to give yourself a little bit of an advantage and a boost to your dice rolls.
Mhm.
So whether you're making an attack or casting a magic spell or just doing something, some special ability, climbing up a wall or something like that, if they've got a little bit of money to spend, that's up to you, about how and when you want to use it.
Mhm.
But you line up all your dice here. It's based 1 through 5 once again. So if you spend one die, you're going to add that D4 and it goes, D4, D6, D8, D10, D12 up 1 through 5, right? And now there is a limit on how much money you can spend, which is equal to the stat that you're using.
Right.
So, for example, if you have a warrior stat that is, let's say it's +4 for some, stronger type boss fight, they could spend up to 4 gold when they're making a warrior check, such as combat or physical endurance or something like that. And so that'll give you extra dice to use. Maybe they really want to, make it count, or they
Mhm.
need to save. So it's almost like legendary actions,
Mhm.
if you will. So it's a little bit of a resource for you to use at your discretion. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right? And then if you want to make it a harder encounter, you've got more money to use, right? Fewer gold coins. It's a limited resource,
Right.
right? Exactly. So it gives you a little more flexibility there. And of course, the same is true for our players.
Hmm.
As we mentioned earlier, they're going to be moving, they're going to be earning their gold coins, and they've got a bank account, and they're going to be able to boost their rolls as well,
Hmm.
So it's only fair that you can do the same, right? And of course, magic is special as you're, creating this magical effect. You got to spend at least 1 gold to cast a magic spell, right? Shooting a lightning bolt or using the force or,
Right.
shape shifting or something like that, right?
Got to be some kind of cost to that.
It's got to be some kind of cost. Exactly. Yeah. So if you say that something is free, it's like, things
Right.
go
No,
things go
no,
crazy. Yeah.
no.
But it's kind of like that's the problem with like spam email is like it doesn't cost anybody to send an email, so they'll just
Right.
send you like 10
Yep.
million emails.
Yep.
Like,
Why not?
right? If that costs you 1 gold, send an email, problem
Yep.
solved. Put it that
Yep.
way, right? Problem solved.
If you have a free ability, then that's why
Yeah.
we say you spam that ability. You just
Yeah,
right
exactly.
in like the video gaming world. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they could swing the sword though for free. It's not going to be as strong, but of
Yep.
course, the sword, that is a reusable ability, right? From I think it was in Snow Crash, another famous sci-fi book. I think
Hmm.
he said,
Hmm.
sword don't run out of bullets.
Right.
So you're good with that.
Yep.
But that's a super important resource that you can use. The players will be using it, and they'll get advantage to disadvantage. And then lastly, sometimes, as the tour guide, especially with new players or, it could be experienced players too, but sometimes they don't know what the limitations are. They're just
Hmm.
thinking like, well, if I have this type of magic or I could do this, like, I'm going unlimited. Sometimes
Right.
they go too far in terms of, what could I do? And sometimes you got to be like, nah, you can't do that. It's
Oh,
beyond this
oh
limitation,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So go
And
ahead.
it's often, in the improvisational world, the yes, but or yes
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
right? Where it's like, yes, you can do that, but then you impose whatever penalty or cost or whatever, so it's not shutting someone down. Sometimes you have to do that if it's getting a little too crazy.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they'll all just be Super Saiyans like blowing up planets.
Exactly. That's it. That's a beautiful example there. So a couple ways, of course. Yeah, the trade-off is great. I always love that, right? You could do that, but it'll cost you, sometimes it's money, but sometimes it's something else. One of the dungeon masters I like, following his YouTube channel, he used these boots of haste that let you run super fast, but then you were running so fast, it was blinding and your
Right.
character couldn't see when you were running super duper fast.
Yeah.
So it's like a bit of a trade-off there, just inherent to using this
Hmm.
magic item.
Hmm.
So if you can get the trade-offs, that's fantastic. Or of course, you just it'll cost some money. So there's a limitation there. So they don't have some infinite glitch. And then sometimes too, you can say, let's say it's I had someone who discovered transmutation recently. So this is when you could turn water to wine, right? To
Right.
or turn a wall. I actually had some really cool use of this actually with Grog Strongjaw. Grog was living in a log cabin up in the frosty mountains there. Actually, they're called the Anvils, and he's living in this log cabin. They came up, and one of the guys transmuted his entire log cabin to stone. Right. So you can turn one substance into another substance,
Hmm.
right? So some limitations there. So, for example, it has to be non living,
Right.
right? Because it's not like polymorph. I'm not going to like turn you into a cockroach and then like smash you. And now I've
Right.
defeated, any creature in the world. So there's a limitation there. And like we were saying, there's a 1 through 5 scale for each of your abilities. So depending on what they're attempting to do, if they go too far, I actually put a minimum spend of gold.
Right.
Okay, so that'll cost you a minimum of this amount of gold. So, for example, if the log cabin would cost you 4 gold to attempt to transmute this entire thing into stone, so that means you got to be able to spend 4 gold. You have to have a magic score, a mage stat of at least +4 to even attempt it. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yeah. Prerequisites to achieve something.
Exactly. Yeah. So some basic prerequisites. So that way, you're like, well, you got to up your magic score to even attempt something so grandiose.
Right.
And that's okay because then also they see like, oh, I'm getting there. Like I'm going to level up and I'll be able to do that later down the line.
Right. And
Or, yeah.
oftentimes in character creation, they want to look, or I mean, any player I would, anyone I've ever known who played, they want to look ahead in their character progression and advancement,
Right.
like skill list, so they can say, well, I definitely want to achieve that. So then that means as I play, I need to put more points into this and spend money on that, in order to
Yep.
get, well, whatever that happens to be. So, just like in fitness, right?
Mhm.
You want to look at that to see, well, what benchmarks do I want to hit?
Yeah, you got
Um,
to have some goals. Exactly. And
right.
that's kind of like tying
And how
back
do
to
I
what
get there?
we
Right.
talked about with character development, is you're really thinking like, you know, how powerful do I want to become and what kind of abilities do I want? Am I trying to be, I'm mastering every school of magic that there is or something else, so that way they have in their mind, they're projecting out, like where the job interview, they're asking you like, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? I like to say, where do you see yourself in the next 5 levels?
Right.
Right? Where are you going?
Right.
Right? Where are you headed?
And
So then you could
in tandem
say
with
they have to
whatever
spend
their
money.
background story is.
Exactly. Yeah. So it would make it needs to make a little more sense with their character concepts.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And then um so you've got the minimum spend, and so you could say, oh, that'll cost you at least 4 gold to do this, but your mate stat is a 3, so that's your spending limit. Right? Or how many, or say I'm going to buff all the players in the party the way a bard would do it, but instead of buff like the entire town, right, where there's like 100 people here, there's a limit, 1 gold per
Right.
person, so you could target up to 3 allies with this spell, right? Up your stats, now you get to target up to 4. Make sense?
Yeah, and oftentimes once players and students kind of get the idea of that's how it works,
Mm-hmm.
they will begin to negotiate with you.
Sure.
And they'll understand the mechanic and say, well, could I spend this much and it can do this? So after you kind of model how these limitations work, it becomes kind of natural from what I've observed when I've played. And I'll negotiate and be like, okay, that sounds fair to me. Whereas in the beginning of the game, it's just all unlimited power all the time,
Yeah.
with everything. And later they temper that down, and um, it is neat to see that evolve over the course of the
Totally.
game.
Yeah, so that's a great point there because now I've seen some players recently as we put together like, oh, there's some limitations here, but I see what you're trying to do. And then it's like, well, maybe there's a way you could work together with one of your teammates, right? They could give you an advantage. They could help you do this. And now, oh, now you could pull that off. But by working together, that's doable,
Right,
right? So then they're really collaborating and working together as a
right.
team because they
That,
really are, they're all in the same adventuring party. I'm trying to show some of the guys, it's not it's not PvP, it's not player versus player like battle to the death, but a little bit of cooperation, and now everybody's more powerful.
Yep. Yep.
So, lastly, there's feats as well. So sometimes, if there's a player, for example, I've got a guy who has gone pretty far deep into lightning magic.
Okay.
Okay, as a powerful magic user,
Hmm.
and it costs a lot of money to do that, to just shoot lightning bolts out of your fingertips or your magic staff. And so, for example, you could blast one person at first, but then there's a feat, or power up is the more generic term that I use for feats and special
Right.
abilities and items that make you more powerful. And so sometimes, you got to say, "Oh, that'll be a feat," right? So you have to level up, get a new feat, and then you're going to unlock this new ability. So for example, he had to level up, get the feat so he could get, instead of one lightning bolt, it can create a line of lightning, and you can blast everybody who's in that line,
Right.
covering an area of effect, just as an example. And then he did another feat, so I showed him chain lightning. Said, all right, you can blast this one guy with the lightning bolt, but then if you want to create a second lightning bolt from the first victim, branching off, you can go boom, 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 boom. It's like checkers, where you
Right.
can zigzag your way around. Chain lightning, that is a feat. So if they try something like that, sometimes that's the limitation. So it's like maybe you have this feat, or maybe you're going to get that feat soon after your next level up,
Right. And
right?
typically those are things that are inherent in a character's progression, but a lot of times if let's say it's a character trying to achieve a certain level of mastery in something, whatever they happen to be, swordsmanship, wizardry, that kind of thing. Um, they might earn that by going through some kind of quest line. They have to find someone. Oh, well, this person lives here. They can teach you, but you have to spend at least this much money and this much time there. And that way it's kind of in the story too, as opposed to just like, video game where, okay, I hit that level, then I can
Yeah,
just check that box now.
right.
So as again, as much as I can just to
That's perfect. That
add,
and
add,
that's
add-
exactly what we do. And that's exactly how I like to do it. So
yeah.
I'm glad you said that, so that way, part of it for me is I also like that there's an in-story explanation for how you got that item or that
Right.
special ability, right?
Right.
Like Aang from Avatar: The Last Airbender, he had to go find someone to teach him waterbending.
Right.
You find someone who can teach you this ability, or you complete the quest. Now you've got the master sword, but you had to go through the entire dungeon, defeat the
Right.
bad guy.
Yep.
Now you've got this reward here, this powerful item that you can use to power up your character.
Mhm.
And so there's always some backstory for like, whoa, where did you get that? And you're like, oh man, you should have seen it. I had to fight this gigantic dragon. We barely made it out of there alive. He almost
Right.
swallowed me up whole, and then I had to fight my way out. And now, now I got my dragon shield. And you're like, oh, geez, whoa, that's crazy. So that's exactly what we want to do. And now, as we're getting ready to wrap up, we'll start thinking about that in context of the Bard's College Adventure Academy. So that is what we see here behind me right now. So the Bard's College Adventure Academy, this is our headquarters. This is like Hogwarts, but you don't just have to be a wizard. You can be any kind of hero here at the Adventure Academy. So we have all these different faculty members. We have different locations and rooms that you can go to, and they are your mentors. They could even give you some quests, or a quest could come from someone on the outside. They'll send the team on some missions to help people, and of course, they'll be getting some loot, they'll be getting some treasure along the way, but it's all about getting onto the adventure, where you get your gear, work together, save the day, have a lot of fun. Right?
Yeah.
That's
And
it.
yeah. So that's their base of operations, and
Yeah.
it will, maybe start from there and see where it goes.
Exactly. And so as we're going to sign off here, so I'll send you a link to the Live Action Fitness blog, which organizes everything from the core rule book, the game mechanics, the setting here at the Bard's College, the places that we just talked about, faculty members, the monster manual or bestiary as we call it, which is the library of creatures and monsters that is ever growing. And everything is put together in one place with folders and links and all that stuff. So I'm going to send that to you directly, and you can use that to prep for the summer campaign. And if anybody else wants it, just join the mailing list and I'll send it right on over.
Yep.
All
Can't wait
right.
to play a fun game and meet the new players.
It's going to be a blast. Thanks again, Alan. Take
Hey,
care.
thanks, Coach Jason.